Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar today about price elasticity. We decided to organize a webinar about price elasticity because we think it's a very important concept to understand and to apply in today's economy, with all kind of cost price changes, volatility, and rapidly changing customer behavior. So it's an expert session today where we dive into this topic in the coming 45 minutes. And I'm doing this show together with Roy. Roy, welcome to the show. Very happy that you're here because you're very experienced in applying price elasticity use cases. At our for our customers.
Yeah, thank you. So later today, during this presentation, I will dive into a few of the use cases we've come across and the lessons learned. So yeah, looking forward to do a deep dive into those cases.
Great. So let's start. First, before we go really deep into the topic, we want to do a short recap about what is price elasticity, to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. So what is it from a theoretical perspective? It's a measurement for the relationship between a price change and a quantity change. And on the right side, you see the slope of the line. The steeper the slope, the higher the relation, and most often it's negative. So the higher the price, the less you sell. So right here, you see in this example that the score is -2, which means if you increase the price with 1%, you sell actually 2% less. So if you decrease the price with 10%, in theory, from the price elasticity score, you will sell 20% more. But of course, this is the theory. The practice is a little bit more advanced, and that's what we like to discuss in this webinar. And with Simpson, we also like to make relationships through optimization. So what can you do actually with price elasticity is not only getting the insights about it, but also about optimizing your margin or optimizing the goal you have as a pricing manager. And most often, this is a margin optimization. To explain you this margin optimization with an example, I would like to use the next slide, where we have two products, which we treat actually the same. So we have a non-sensitive item and we have a sensitive item, and both have the same sales price for now. Let's make it easy. Both have the same sales price of 80. They have the same cost price of 40. And also, to make it easy, they have the same volume of 50 units per month. So this makes us that the total cost of this specific product is 50 times 40 is 2,000. And the revenue, of course, is the sales price times the volume. And that makes 80 times 50 is 4,000. The profit is, of course, 4,000 minus 2,000. So it's 2,000 for each product, which makes 4,000 as a total profit for these two products if you treat them the same without respecting the elasticity scores. I hope you're still with me, but this is like a normal economical business situation where you sell products without optimizing them on elasticity. Now, if we get the insights of how elastic this specific product is, we see that the sensitive item has an elasticity score of -3, which actually means that if we change here the price, so we give the sensitive items a 1% discount, we should sell 3% more. And with a non-sensitive item, the score is -0.4. So if we give it a 1% markup, we only sell 0.4% less. So then we design an experiment about this to test this elasticity scores. So we give the sensitive item a discount of 10% to realize that extra sales and to benefit from this very elastic product. And for the non-sensitive item, we give it a 10% higher price, so a markup actually, because it only cost us 4% of the sales, but we get 10% higher revenue and higher sales. So giving these insights, we can actually calculate, of course, the new price, which is 72 now because it's 10% lower for the sensitive item. And we have 88 for the non-sensitive item because that's 10% higher. The new volume is then 65 because compared to 50, that's the old volume. The elasticity score says that you sell 3 times or 30% more, because the elasticity score is -3, and the price change is times 10, so you sell 30% more. And for the non-sensitive items, it's only 4%. So the difference between the old volume and the new volume is 50 versus 38 is only 4%. So what gives us the new revenue, which is actually the volume, is the new volume is 65 times the new price, 72 times 65, gives us the total revenue now of 4,680. For the non-sensitive item, we have the new price, 88, and the new volume is 48, which gives us a new revenue of 4,224. I hope you're still with me. The new margin is then, of course, the new revenue minus the new cost, is 2,000 euro 80. So it's new revenue minus new cost. And also for the non-sensitive, it's 2,304. This is, of course, new revenue minus the new cost, which gives us the total new margin of almost 4,400 euros per month, which is an increase of 9.6% in total when you are applying price elasticity and also optimizing them based upon this elasticity scores. I hope you're still with me. I try to explain it one by one, but I think, yeah, it's the conclusion you can draw from this example is that's really hard to do this with Excel or with your calculator to come to such an optimization. So that's, of course, why we designed Simpson, to have all these calculations for you automatically and to set up experiments and to apply and benefit from these elasticities and margin optimizations recommendations. These kind of examples and also the shortcomings and benefits from this, we are going to discuss today in this webinar. So going to the content of this webinar and going to the poll, actually, we also have a poll to make it a little bit more interactive. I just explained one example, but we're really curious if you already have experience with elasticity into your pricing strategy. So that's why we have this poll. We have a chat. If you're joining on LinkedIn, we are completely live, so you can just say comment, put in a comment a yes or a no. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can put in the YouTube comments just a yes or a no, and we can see in the chat if you already applied it, yes or no. So looking forward to see if you already applied it into your pricing process. Today we're going to talk about 5 different topics. First, how and when to use it. Second, of course, very frequently asked questions is, do I have enough data, or what is the right data to make it sufficient for elasticity? We're going to talk about the market circumstances. So what are more market circumstances to include in evaluating price elasticity? And we're going to talk about how to set up a good experiment with elasticity. And last but not least, we go through the lessons learned, and there is also room for going through your questions and answering them. You can also use the chat for that. Once again, we are live on YouTube and LinkedIn. Unfortunately, we cannot see the YouTube comments. So if you have any questions, please use the LinkedIn chat. Then these questions are available here for us, and we can walk through them by the end of the session. So let's kick off with how and when to use it. First of all, we start with a kind of product segmentation to determine which products are suitable for elasticity. And we have a kind of filtering method to come to the right products to use for elasticity. So on the, it's getting dark. On the left side, you see the top items and the top key value items. They are often actually the most valuable items for your customers. And these items, they drive traffic, but also drive the price image and price perception among your customers. So these products are often set in a kind of competitive item price setting, where you benchmark these prices with competitor data, if they're available, or if you give the freedom to sales to adjust discounts based upon negotiation with your customers. So these products often are ignored in price elasticity because there are more factors that make it a purchase than just price elasticity. Um, the other one is the RRP prices. These prices are often set by manufacturers. So, for example, if you sell iPhones or laptops from Apple, they have a certain RRP price, and you, as a retailer, e-commerce, or any trade organization, don't have the freedom to set your own prices because they are restricted to this recommended retail price. So then we have actually three types of products left, which are core items, slow movers, and own brands. Core items are based upon our experience, the margin drivers. They have less price perception, but they drive actually the quantity and also the margin into your company. Based upon our experience, we see a lot of room for experimentation there for elasticity pricing. We have also slow movers. Slow movers, also from a business perspective, um, is a lot of freedom and a lot of optimization possible with elasticity. However, we see that the data quantity there is a kind of restriction from a technical perspective. So that's not always possible to apply elasticity pricing upon. We have a module called sensitivity pricing, but this is something we like to discuss in the next webinar by the end of June. It's not in the scope of this webinar because here we focus more on elasticity. So what's left next to slow movers is that we have own brands. Own brands usually follow a specific brand strategy, but if you produce your own products or if you have your own private label brand, we see based upon our use cases that there is room for experimentation to see what is the price sensitivity of your brand or your private label products, and to experiment to come to the right willingness to pay um, for your own private label products. So to conclude, we see especially for the core items and the private label own brand products, the most applicable product selection for applying price elasticity. So give the floor to Roy to dive into the specific use cases for B2B and B2C.
Yes, Arjan, thank you for bringing us the basics again of price elasticity, but also the complexity of it. And of course, they highly differentiate, right, between B2B and B2C. There are completely different industries you're dealing with. In B2B, for example, we have to deal with the buyers are known. They're identified either by a login or they have an account manager specifically to it. But there's also a lot of key account specific agreements on pricing. There's a lot of relationship-based pricing going about. In B2C, buyers are often more anonymous. It's more focused around either a single product conversion. And it's usually optimized for small orders, and it's more of a marketing-driven conversion. So going to the next slide, we have taken 4 use cases. You will see 5 here, but we will discuss 4 because we will combine promos and discounts. But we also try to demonstrate here to which industry the use cases are most applicable. Doesn't mean if you don't see the action in your industry, it's not applicable. It's just that best practices and what we have experienced from our side haven't seen them there a lot. So for use cases, the what-if scenarios, e-commerce, wholesale, and manufacturing, we can enhance our cost base plus strategy with elasticity. A lot of those is done in e-commerce and wholesale. Effective promos and effective discounts, so either e-commerce and wholesale. And there is a great way of identifying key value items with elasticity. And there is a more complex strategy on it where you can actually add basket analysis on top of it to optimize margin for it. And we'll go through all of these. So let me first start with the what-if scenario. So the what-if scenario basically gives a pricing manager the option to make a scenario in Simpson based upon the elasticity models we have for a specific region, specific sales channel, specific category, specific brand, you name it. And to say, what if let's say I increase my prices by 2%. Based upon the example Arjan already showed us completely in the beginning, we can make per article, per product, we have a an elasticity score, which we can basically say, okay, so there's an impact on revenue, there is an impact on quantity, there is an impact on margin, so there is an impact per product, but also on the full group, we can have an expected impact. So that's what you will see here. So kind of you can already make the business case to determine, okay, so what would be the impact if I increase my prices by 2% or decrease by 2%? And is this then my desired outcome? So we go to the next slide. So we can do this, for example, on product level, but it's also interesting to do it, for example, on sales channel. So one of the things we've come across with one of our clients in Germany, this specific client was selling in Otto and in Amazon. And one of the things we discovered is that Amazon, the products on there were way more price elastic than on Otto, which means there was a price differentiation strategy we derived out of the outcomes we came across here. That we said, well, in Amazon, we can actually lower the prices to increase volume. And in Otto, we could actually increase the prices a bit more, which not a high impact on volume. So this really, this was actually evolved into separate channel strategies for these products. So if we go to the next slide, we have user case 2. And we are talking here about enhancing your cost base plus strategy. So I think a lot of clients we see are using a cost base plus, right? So you have the cost of a product, you do a markup on top of that, and that's going to be your selling price. And it's a very safe way of pricing. Not a lot of data of that is required, of course. But we also wanted to use elasticity to enhance those cost base plus strategies. And so if we do a full elasticity analysis on all of the products where we have the data from, sometimes you will see that within a product family or within a brand or a category, not all of the products have a proper data quality score in order for us to determine the right elasticity scores. So in that level, you want to aggregate it about a level higher. So you want to look at a brand, or you want to actually combine it between brand and subcategory. And if you have the elasticity scores, you could say, okay, so maybe it's better based upon our transactional data and our elasticity analysis. It is better to increase or decrease the prices, right? Depending on the alignment of your strategy. So let's take the first example here. So we have Duravit here, and basically the elasticity analysis showed us it's better to decrease the prices. And the current markup is 15%. So looking at the new markup strategy, we might want to go into maybe not adopt the full 4.2%, but maybe we want to go to 12% or 13%, but lower a bit and evaluate the impact on that. While for other products, so let's say Roka, we see that it's better to increase the product by 7.1%. Well, it's already 53% markup. So maybe let's not straight away jump to 60, but do it in 2 steps. So let's go to 56 and then go to 60. Which actually results, if you go to the next slide, and this can be then taken away into your 3 months or price changes, right? Or your 6-month price change, because this is just an analysis and you put that next to your markup. And then when you have your discussion at the end of the quarter on your prices, and you can say, okay, well, we're not meeting margin goals. Where do we want to increase or decrease the prices? And then you can shovel around based upon the elasticity analysis with your cost base plus percentages and your markup percentages. So this is what happened here. So for some of the products, we increased them, and for some of them, we actually decreased them. And this was then the new output out of it. So this is another easy way of applying elasticity just as an enhancement on your current cost base plus. So basically just using the analysis, do not adjust your strategy. You're just changing the output of your strategy. Okay, next slide. Another interesting part, and now we're getting into a bit more complex price elasticity strategies. So if we're talking about B2B, one of the hardest things I think to determine is, are we using the right discount percentages? Are we not giving away too much? Are we giving away not enough? Do we need to stimulate, And the other one for B2C is promos. So if you want to do a promo on your website, on your specific brand or category, am I still, what is the right percentage? What should I use for a promo? So basically, Simpson does the elasticity analysis. So you can see your price elasticity, and that's the left down picture here. And it also kind of provides you with a demand forecast. And based upon this elasticity on your historical transactional data, Simpson actually can do a regression analysis to determine what is the optimal selling price for revenue and what's the optimal selling price for margin. Looking for revenue, you're optimizing for volume, for sales, right? And if you optimize for margin, you're really optimizing for profit. So if you want to combine this, for example, with an inventory, so let's say you have an inventory of 300 and you want to bring this back to 100, you might want to sell the first 200 units of this specific product at the price of revenue. So that's the lower price where we actually pinpoint what's the best selling price to optimize the volume without going lower doesn't yield you anything extra. And then the last 100, you want to go back to the margin side of things. So this regression analysis gives you kind of the two bounds, the feelings of what is the best selling price if I want to optimize for margin, and what's the best selling price if I want to optimize for volume. And anywhere there in between, you can set your price depending on your strategic goal. We go to the next slide. And then there is the fourth use case, and that's actually when we talk about key value items. Arjan already talked about that. That's about maybe 10% of the products, and your price perception is very high for these products. But they also drive traffic, right? It's a reason why people come to your website or they buy with you because of these items. And these items you usually want to have in a pretty decent spot, and you want to make sure that because the price perception is rather high in the market, you want to make sure that your customers, your clients have the feeling they are treated well, right? They're taken care of. So you're not raising prices every single time for them. No, they're competitive in the market. But usually those products are also bought together with other products. And this is where elasticity also really comes into play. Because, and then going back to the example Arjen showed before, so you have the core items that are usually bought together with the key value items. And then you can see the core items we have seen, mostly they are not very price sensitive. So you can actually increase margin there, go a bit lower with your key value items. So the perception in the market still remains that you are fair price for your product. And the other products they buy together with the key value items are a bit higher in margin and they're price insensitive or not that sensitive. So what happens is that the overall basket, we go to the next slide, means that the overall basket will actually go up on average volume and share of wallet will go up because people will spend more while they actually have the perception that you are not raising your prices. So this is a really interesting approach to actually look into how you can optimize prices and use elasticity for those specific use cases. Okay. So then we have data requirements, and this is another more difficult part, of course, if we talk about price elasticity. Because what are the minimum data requirements we need in order to determine and for models to be determined a proper elasticity score? Well, if we go to the next slide, what you can see here, and this is actually, I think, for all the people working with data, and I'm assuming most of you do, is data quality remains a challenge throughout the company, right? It's always difficult to get the right data quality in there. So we will provide for always a score for data quality, module accuracy, and then you have the price elasticity. So there is always, you can always set your thresholds yourself to feel like where I'm comfortable with, I'm still working with the outcome and I'm feeling okay with. So if we go to the next slide, what you will see here is the models we're using, of course, is only as good as the data that comes into it. And what is the data then that we need? Well, the next slide, what you will see, for example, I think is a very clear example if we talk about order lines, right? So we import all the sales data in Simpson, so we can see at what specific price, at which month your product has been sold. So if there are errors into your ERP or your order data, or whatever, and you see the price is 0, this can really screw up a model. So we have automatic outlier removal in there, but also if you're working yourself and trying to get those elasticity scores, you need to normalize the data. So keep in mind which data set is relevant to use, because one of the lessons learned, for that matter, what I can tell you as well, is we had COVID, of course, and the market wasn't behaving as they was before. So there was a clear pre-COVID and post-COVID period. And you couldn't use pre-COVID or during COVID, those data didn't really represent the current market anymore. So you couldn't use the elasticity data from in that period of time. So you really had to narrow it down. Same thing if we talk about elasticity products and about seasonality. If I'm selling winter tires, I don't want to use the data of the tires that I'm selling in the summer. I want to have that data for that specific tire for winter, because that corresponds with the right data. So there is a very interesting thing to say, and you have to really keep a clear and keen eye for is, am I working with the right data set and have I the right parameters in place? Next slide. So I would like to give the floor back to Arjen to discourse more about the parameters we're using.
Yes, thanks, Roy. So of course it's about having the right inputs to come to a certain output, and the data itself is being evaluated with the data quality score. And this is a feature in Simpson where per product this data quality score is generated, and every product gets a count score, a variance score, and a correlation score, and these metrics together give you the data quality score. And the count score is the amount of price points where the model is trained with. We have at least, you see on the next slide, a minimum of 12 data points, price point actually, and this price point could be a day, a week, or a month of data. So depending on your business, you can choose the time frame yourself to see, okay, what's the right price point or data point to select. The other one is, of course, the variance. So models really like data which has a lot of variety, because if you have a lot of count, so let's say you have 1,000 different price points, but only with one price, then it's really hard to calculate an optimal price because you have only one price. So you also need a level of variance into your price data. So variance is also one of the quality scores, quality metrics. And the last one is also the correlation between the price and the quantity. That's automatically being measured, but you can also check that yourself in the interface of Simpson, where you see here on the lowest chart, you see the average prices per month. And you can compare that with, on the right side, the average quantity per month, so that you can see if there was a price change in the past months or weeks, did I also see a relation and an impact on my volume. So this is, of course, which could be generated automatically if you're using Simpson. But yeah, based upon our experience, it's really important to have a minimum amount of data quality in order to make confident and also statistically correct optimizations based upon price elasticity. So users of Simpson have actually a benchmark of a minimum of 0.4. That's what's the minimum data quality to make it with a certain confidence. And of course, this can be optimized while using one of the four metrics. This was in a snapshot the second topic of data requirements. It's a big topic. I think we can fill a webinar specifically about data quality. So if you have any questions, I think in the last topic, we can go to the questions about data quality, and we invite you to ask any questions for improving data quality or sharing experiences. But right now we want to go to the next topic about market circumstances. And to kick off this topic, I would like to share a meme with you. It's a meme I came across on Google, and it's about, did you say a trip to Disneyland is elastic? Are you kidding me? So if you talk about elasticity, and especially in this case about the trip to Disneyland, it really depends on the person you're asking if it's elastic or inelastic. Probably when you ask her dad, then it's probably elastic. But if you're asking her, she will pay anything to go to Disneyland. So that's also where it becomes a little bit complex, because price elasticity is a simple method. But if it's a simple representation of the market circumstances of the reality, because yeah, the world is more complex than just simple relation between the price and the quantity, and we are completely aware of that. So that's why we also would like the power we did in the beginning, but especially also the shortcomings you have to handle and you have to be aware of when applying elasticity. So Roy, I give the floor to you again to discuss the market circumstances you need to be aware of.
Thank you for that. So, and I think you already said this is a very fair point, right? So the dynamics of the market way bigger than just the correlation between price and quantity. So just to take you through a few of the things that a price elasticity model is not taking in consideration directly. So your competition, right? So indirectly, because we're taking a look at your sales prices and your historical data, right? That's what you usually elasticity model. So indirectly, you take into consideration your competition, but it doesn't take into consideration if they do it today, an execution sale with a 40% discount. That's not something an elasticity model can comprehend or can take care of, right? And also, if your direct competitors are running out of stock, there is no availability for them. There's scarcity on the market. Of course, you should increase your prices usually, right? Because you wanna utilize on those things, and that's not something an elasticity model at that specific point can take care of. Another one, what I just said and I showed about Otto and Amazon. So by setting up the different price strategies for the channels, of course, there was also some cannibalization happening, right? Because, of course, some clients actually did figure out that on Amazon, the prices were cheaper for the same product than it was on Otto. So basically, what happened is the sales in Amazon increased and in Otto decreased for a certain amount. And there was a percentage of cannibalism part of that. Also, brand reputation, product quality, customer loyalty, all these things are not configured and not taking place into the price elasticity model by itself. And yes, there are multiple ways of taking those things into consideration. And this specific webinar is purely about elasticity, but of course you have the option of enhancing the elasticity model with different business rules, with different strategies, and combining them, for example, with a competitor strategy, or combining them with an inventory strategy, where you can actually make sure that you don't have these issues and you take them into consideration. But just purely looking at price elasticity by itself, it doesn't take these things into consideration. So therefore, we really always say price elasticity should be considered as a guide or a predictor with a certain inaccuracy, but it's not an absolute predictor, right? So it's still a mathematical approach. And if there are sudden changes or COVID happens or these kind of things happen, you will still need human interaction to actually really make that decision. And what do we need to do? What do we need to go? And an elasticity computation could also, for example, say my prices should go double because based on my historical data and the price elasticity of this product, it's very price insensitive. I can actually increase my prices by a lot. If you do that overnight, of course, that has an impact, right? So you need to guardrail these things. So you need to take care of those. Next slide. And in order for everything to be sure that you are setting that all up and making sure that you're doing this the correct way, we strongly emphasize on setting up good experiments. And Arjan will tell a bit more about how we do that within Simpson and what you should take in consideration.
Yes. In the next video, on the next slide, you see actually the interface of Simpson. You saw some snapshots earlier on. And we always start, of course, with the elasticity score we explained earlier in the session. And this elasticity score automatically gives a recommendation based upon the current price, the current cost, the current quantity, the current revenue margin, and margin percentage. So we, of course, respect your current margin percentages, your margin goals, but based upon the elasticity score, if it's elastic or inelastic, yeah, we recommend the right outcome according to your goal, which could be optimization for revenue or optimization for margin. But of course, this is not a 100% certain prediction. I think we already discussed it, but in the statistics, you have something like there are no certainties, only probabilities. So based upon the model accuracy, we give you a kind of a probability score. How accurate this margin improve is. So here the model accuracy is quite high, and also the data quality is enough. So therefore, we advise to start an experiment about this to test this new price. So how do we set up an experiment based upon these values? If we go to the next slide, we have high over, of course, two types of products. So we have insensitive products and we have sensitive products. And sensitive products, we give a discount because we expect a higher volume with a lower price. And insensitive items, we give a markup because we expect a slightly lower or even equal volume, but then with a higher price and thus a higher margin. And that's how we set up the experiment. Of course, as Roy already said, we like to work with guardrails and bandwidth so that you have a kind of an risk protection to your price changes, and that you can actually mitigate the risk that you don't have the that big increases or decreases in price. And afterwards, you start evaluating, of course, the impact. And with the new data flowing in, you can automatically, directly trigger the machine learning model to come to a new optimization based upon the latest data. So in the next slide, we have a kind of a 5-step approach how to design an experiment. Of course, it's very important in the first place to start with a good objective. It's like the hypothesis we like to set. So if we have the right products, if we have the right use case, then it starts with having the right objective. So let's assume we want to optimize our margin as an objective. Then we have a selection of products we want to optimize on margin with the elasticity score. But we also need to evaluate in the right way in the end. And therefore, we need to set up a test and a control group in the second step. And we can set up this test and control group on a customer level. We can do it on a product level, or we can even do it on a channel level, like the Amazon and Otto example Roy explained. But it's really important that it's not biased. So if you already know beforehand that there is a total different price sensitivity in a channel or in a country or in different types of customer groups, then it's also not a very good scope for doing this experiment. So make sure the scope you take is kind of a good representation and it's unbiased, so that you have a good separation between customers or products. Then you need to define the timeline. The timeline can be really specific and related to your business. So in e-commerce, the customer behavior could be a little bit more dynamic, so you can already see results in a few days or a week. But in B2B, it could happen that you see the results only after 1 month or maybe a quarter. So therefore, it's really important to set the right timeline to have a realistic test of elasticity. Step 5 is also really important that you evaluate the right way. So if we have the test and control group in step 2, it's really important that you have a separate analysis on this test and control group. Because if they both increased in margin, because that was the goal, then probably something else is happening than just price elasticity. And if only the test group is increasing in margin, then you can evaluate if price elasticity was successful and if the margin suggestions from Simpson did their work. So it's really important that you evaluate the right way. And also this is a loop. So it's a kind of a scientific loop. You have a hypothesis, you test it with data, but you also become smarter. So having evaluated the right way, you can start with a smarter objective in the next experiment. And this is also how we designed the system in such a way that you can walk through this loop and becoming smarter as a company while experiences this loop over and over again. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is an example Roy already discussed of a biased experiment. So if you want to have an experiment, an equal experiment on Otto and Amazon, and you expect the same outcome, yeah, if you already know beforehand that there's a total different sensitivity per channel, please don't do it on a channel dimension, but do it on a dimension. For example, on a product level or any other level you can come with. So, Roy, the lessons learned. What can you share?
Yes. So I think and the most important one, and let me continue then on what you just said, Arjan, is you need to embrace experiments if you start working with elasticity. Right? It's about setting a new price. It's about trusting the data in your organization, and it's about evaluating the results for that. So there should really be a continuous loop. Basically, there should always be in your organization, ideally, but specifically when you talk about elasticity, you want to make sure that that loop works is closely working, and you really embrace that way of working with it. Because also, if your data quality is not high enough, and that's the second point, you might need to experiment a bit more to create the different price points in order to enhance the data quality of these products, in order to get them into an elasticity strategy, right? So data quality is another very crucial step. And then there is another one and a third one. One thing we've definitely learned as well, and we shared with you in the beginning, not all products suitable for price elasticity, right? So if you're talking about products, it's a commodity product. It's the same level of service you're offering, but your competitor is offering it for 10 euros cheaper. You have to be competitive with that price, right? So there's nothing other way to differentiate yourself with. So then you can use an elasticity strategy that maybe based on your historical data would say, well, you should increase your price by 1 or 2 euros. That doesn't make sense, because in the end, it's the competitor, it's the price, the actual selling price, that really determines the consumer or your customer behavior. So in that case, it should be in a market-driven strategy. We also recommend to start small. We know it can be kind of scary to use price elasticity. The strategy by itself is rather complex and it's hard to grasp. We have also experienced that with companies we work together with. So start small, create the awareness, work with products you feel comfortable with, where you can do the experiment with. And once you get the results out of that, document it well so you can explain it very clearly to the rest of your team, but also to senior management, to show them what you have done and what the results are. And maybe you've learned that the products you thought were price elastic weren't. That also gives you something to learn and iterate upon. And that's where the loop is very important. So you start to learn how your products are behaving based upon price changes. And that's very valuable information from a pricing perspective, of course. Another thing is use proper guardrails. We already spoke a bit about it, but it might happen that an elasticity analysis would say, well, you should double your prices or triple it or cut it by half, because maybe your data quality is not good enough, right? So you always want to make sure you work with min margins, maybe floor ceiling prices, cap it, make sure that the price changes are maybe not more than 2, 3, 5% at a time, etc. So there are a lot of guardrails to make that strategy smarter. Or a very good one to use this one is, if you're not working with elasticity yet, or you don't have the tools to really work with it, you can use it just as an analysis and then experiment with it in a sense of for a promotion or enhance your cost base plus strategy, right? With the findings out of it. So it's important to really understand power of price elasticity, and I think we've shown a few of these cases already, but also the shortcomings, because it's really a simplified version of the market industry. So you need to enhance those findings with your industry knowledge and what's happening in the current market and industry. And last but not least, elasticity isn't just one optimization method, right? So there is a multitude of optimizations and pricing strategies you could use. We strongly believe that elasticity is a very good one, and most companies are making use of it, also the larger companies and corporations. But yeah, if your products are not suitable for it or you don't have the data quality, we can look into ways of improving the data quality. We can use other strategies to already start implementing dynamic pricing or making smarter pricing decisions. So I think those are very important. If we go to the next slide. basically, this is what we wanted to tell you for today with regards to the price elasticity and how it works in Simpson and the lessons we've learned so far. And hopefully, you got some knowledge from it. But also, what's interesting, of course, is as we just showcased, we offer these pilots and these analyses if you want, and it's fully automated. We have the scripts, we have the data sciences people working, of course, to do these analysis, so we can fully guide you with it. So probably what will happen in a week or 2 weeks, you get a phone call from either me or Arjan, because we also would very much like to know what did you think of this webinar, but also are there more things you would like to dive us deeper into? Because of course we have limited time. So we're really looking into what should be the next webinar and what's another good deep dive session. But yeah, you also have, of course, the possibility to get the pilot with us. We can discuss that later specifically for your company if you're interested in that. Arjan, I would like to give the floor back to you.
Yes, the time is flying when you're having fun. The webinar was scheduled until 45 and it's already 45, but we have time for some questions. We just stay until the questions are answered. So please write your questions in the chat and we will go through them the coming minutes. First question was from Carl. Thanks, Carl, for asking this question. What's your view on price elasticity in B2B business? I think, Roy, you touched this point in the webinar, so maybe you can elaborate.
Yeah, so for B2B, I think there are multiple applications for it, right? One of the bigger challenges we see in the B2B industry is there is a part which we call it's data quality, right? So the challenge is that are there enough price experiments in the past already with price differentiations so that we can actually run a proper price elasticity model. So we have a more comprehensive model, which we use more in the B2B industry, which we call the price sensitivity model. There will be later on in June, we will do a webinar about that to really touch that. But to go back to the question, there is definitely a use case for price elasticity in B2B businesses. Because what I've seen, how clients have been using it as well, if there are 4 or 5 key accounts, right, and they have their own different prices, but they are having pretty similar transactional behavior. And the reason I'm saying transactional behavior is we're talking about volumes, we're talking about products. What we can do is we can combine these 5 key accounts into one data set and do a price elasticity analysis on top of that, which then can say, okay, so on average, over these 5 key accounts, this should be an optimal selling price with regards to volume or with regards to margin. Depending on the strategic goal you want to achieve with these key accounts, you then can renegotiate, or your salespeople or your account manager can actually go and sit with these clients to see like, okay, what are the price sensitive products for these clients? So where should we give discount upon and which ones shouldn't we? Because what we see happening in B2B still a lot is that on the full product portfolio, a discount is given. While you can actually also select specific product groups where a discount can be given upon. And this is also where price elasticity could really help in determining which product should be given a discount upon or not. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, another question we often get is, does Simpson help with the data quality improvement? That's just a frequently asked question we like to discuss here. The answer is yes and no. Yes, we give you, based upon the current quality, recommendations how to improve that score. So as already said, we have a minimum score of minus 0.4 to make the data quality to make the data qualitative enough for price elasticity. However, this is based upon the count score, the variance, and the correlation. And of course, you cannot influence everything. You can influence the count score to a certain extent to sell more, but yeah, with slow movers, this is a challenge. But the variance score you can influence because you can start with experimenting in a way how we just described it to get more variance in the data and to see if you have if you can see what's the right price elasticity to make the data more mature enough for applying elasticity scores later on. So yes, we give suggestions. You cannot always control them, but the ones that you can control, you can work with to improve the data quality.
Yeah, and to add upon that one, I think, which is an interesting one, Arjan, is that what we also do is that, specifically in e-commerce, what we see happen a lot is before we actually run, so we want to enrich the different price points, right? So we first run the product into a follow the market average strategy, or maybe 5% or 4% cheaper than the market, depending on your positioning, right? And then you kind of build that model because you're just following the market behavior, and by doing that, you're basically having a very guarded experiment because you're just following the market, which fills up actually your model. So that's also an approach we're using for that one.
Yeah, yeah, great addition. Joep, thanks for the question. Hi, Simpson team. Thanks for the clear presentation. In e-commerce, we often have a lot of benchmark data. In that case, should we focus on the absolute price elasticity, e.g., changing the price and tracking the volume impact, or relatively price elasticity, e.g., matching the competitor price or not matching it and tracking the volume? Very good question. Roy, would you like to kick off this?
Yeah. So for me, just to make sure that I get it correctly. So of course there was a lot of benchmark data available, right? So it's easy to get all the data in and to scrape it, etc. So for e-commerce, I think it kind of depends on what is the product you're offering, right? Is it a commodity product that's bought a lot in the market and is easily changed, right? And is there an added value on top of it? And is there a lot of how you say that? Is there a lot of differentiation on top with services and stuff and that kind of things? Because then I would say you basically want to look at the absolute price elasticity. So you want to change the price and track definitely what's the impact on the volume, because relatively, then you already look more, okay, so what are the competitor prices doing? And if you're matching the competitor prices, it's more for the commodity products. And if you more have highly individual products, you want to use your own data and base it upon your own sales data. So this is where the differentiation is and the way I would approach it. Not sure if you have anything to add on that, Arjan.
No, yeah, I think it's sometimes a little bit needs a little bit more context, of course, to what kind of company you're asking the question, and then I think the answer becomes a little bit more extended than the current answer. But I think, yeah, right now it's I have nothing to add.
So
Do
what
we
we
have
can
any
do here,
more?
because I really like the question, so if you want to have a more in-depth answer on this, we can do a follow-up call and go a bit more in-depth about the specific situation for your company.
Yeah, I'm asking the moderator if there are any more questions in the chat. Sometimes it has a delay on LinkedIn to this chat. So if there are no questions popping up, then I'm also looking at the time. It's yeah, we really want to thank you for attending this event. As Roy already said, we have a next webinar coming up in 6 weeks about price sensitivity, which is a kind of a follow-up optimization method of elasticity. So you will get the invite also probably later on. Right now, thanks again, also Bial and Roy, and we are looking forward to continue the conversation about elasticity later on.
Thank you
Have a
very
great day.
much.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.